Welcome to the Breakaway USA show, and boy, do we have an incredible show for you today. We have two very special guests. One is Landon Starbuck, who just created the new documentary, The War on Children, which has almost about 15 million views on X, and that's just on X. It's an incredible story about the war on children, which talks about the ongoing battle of control for control of the next generation of their minds. What it does is it talks about the battle plans used to control the future.
Are they intentionally sexualizing our children and stealing their innocence?
I think that's right.
TikTok specifically is designed to target young people. That's who their audience is.
Have children died because of social media?
Absolutely.
Have they been trafficked off of social media?
100%.
Have they been sexually exploited off of social media?
Ongoing. Yes.
I'm scrolling on TikTok. I see little kids with TikTok. What are they looking at?
This is what you don't want kids to see, is that correct?
Exactly.
And again, this is depicting children. This is supposed to be kids.
Well, honestly, I didn't even know that transition from female to male was an option until I was on social media and began being exposed to those type of communities.
You've never seen a 18-month-old masturbating?
No, I haven't. Have you seen any sexually explicit drag shows marketed as all ages for kids that you would denounce or think that are a problem and that you want to distance yourself from?
No.
You know this is wrong.
So, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to end the interview.
They use the word sexualize kids at a young age, or, give me a break.
It just seems like there's no moral, construct at all.
Are kids facing just the absolute worst onslaught of grooming that we've ever seen?
Yes, the entertainment industry is sexualizing children for an agenda.
Your daughter was secretly transitioned at school.
This policy has to do with children as young as 5 all the way through high school.
Penthouse footed the bill to lobby before state boards of education. Yes, Penthouse and Playboy. The history behind this is far darker than most Americans understand.
Do you think the big tech companies at this point are essentially aiding and abetting human traffickers and people who are working to exploit children?
Absolutely.
If you don't want to hear it in a school board meeting, why should children be able to check it out of the school system?
There is misinformation presented that somehow that we're doing surgery on minors or even children, and that simply is not true.
How old were you when they gave you a double mastectomy?
It was a month after my 13th birthday.
Ultimately, we're going to talk about, are they going to give, the counselor's going to give them medication there at school without their parents' permission? I think we're leading towards an absurd and horrific time.
Well, first of all, we weren't forewarned we would be sharing a locker room. We had no idea. I turned around, a 6'4", 22-year-old man, fully intact with an exposing male genitalia.
This ideology is killing our kid.
Do you think more people need to speak up to protect kids like your daughter?
Yes, I do.
Well, I think from heaven she can see how hard you fought for her.
Do you feel like this is a war on children?
I know it's a war on children. But like they said, we're coming for your kids.
Yeah.
And they have.
I like the tagline that you guys have that says, to win this war, you have to understand the tactics of your enemy. And of course, we have Harrison Tinsley, who is just an awesome father and who has some very good news that he told us he's going to tell us about today. So I'm very happy to hear about that. Welcome, everyone. And of course, we have Simon and Gentry, who are members of the Breakaway USA team. So Simon obviously was telling us about this movie, so I'm so happy to have both of you on. One thing I kind of wanted to open it up in is if you can explain what the movie is for people who don't know and why they should see it and why they should have all their friends and their family see it as well.
Sure. Well, up until now, there's been all of these disconnected reels and tweets that we've seen claiming that there's porn in schools or that there's sexually explicit drag shows happening in front of kids or that girls are getting double mastectomies at 12 years old and everybody's saying, oh, that's not happening. And because of censorship online, it's made it really difficult to get facts, to get truth through. And so, in my space, I combat child exploitation every day. I have a nonprofit called Freedom Forever. And I was getting really frustrated at how many people just didn't even understand the scope of this problem. And it was because of the censorship, and it was because people just were able to able to bury their head in the sand, saying, there can't be that many people, children exploited. Child trafficking is a conspiracy theory, as the Atlantic, wrote. And I said, we have to make a film. And so my husband, who had a Hollywood background, directed some of the biggest stars in Hollywood and left the entertainment industry, was like, all right, let's do this. And so it was a big leap of faith, and it was a very difficult 6 months making this film, but it was so worth it. And it's just been amazing seeing the impact that this film has had on people and their perspective. So that's really what I would say about it. It is really important for every parent, every grandparent, anyone who cares about children at all, uncles, aunts, cousins, to really understand the threat facing this generation.
Gentry, you were telling me something about the movie that you really liked and it stood out to you. Do you want to tell us about it?
Yeah, so it was actually the very first part of the movie where it talked about how now, after watching this film, now's the time to act. And I guess my question would be, what are you hoping the response is from parents and uncles and aunts and all the people who are watching this? What are you hoping their response is going to be? Because I feel like a lot of this content is really heavy and hard to watch, right?
Right. Yeah, and that was one of our fears, was that when we were, editing this, and Simon was one of the editors who helped with this project, we were like, oh my gosh, how's anybody going to sit down for 2.5 hours and watch this film? And we tried every way we could to just cut down these interviews, but it just, every time we tried to dilute the power of these conversations, it was like trying to make a reel out of something, and you just were missing the humanity of it. So I think it's amazing that people are willing to sit and watch this, film. But I think it's a testament to the stories, because the film is really powerful because of the people in it, and their stories are real. And we're not just talking about an ideology, we're actually seeing the lives impacted and the death toll of it. And I think that is really what is hitting home for a lot of people. So yeah, I mean, my hope for, parents especially, is that they wake up from this, slumber, and, peel the shades from their eyes and understand that their job is to parent their children. And we can't keep making excuses for why our children are being sexualized and all that. We do have a lot of control, especially in America, in the West. We have a lot more freedoms than, a lot of people in the other parts of the world do. And we're just not using them. We're being lazy and complacent. So that is something that I really hope this ignites a fire in parents to take action.
One thing that I was thinking about is, when you start making a movie like this, you kind of know what you're getting yourself into, but at some point things pop up that you didn't expect. What did you discover along the way that just blew your mind, or that you didn't expect when you started the journey of making the documentary?
Oh my gosh. I'm telling y'all, the process of this documentary was unlike anything I've ever experienced in filmmaking, music, anything in the industry. And I feel like there was a lot of spiritual warfare. And some people believe in that, some people don't. But when so many things happen, and sometimes just one day, that are just unbelievable or just really odd, or, there's a lot of effort to just stop us from making it. And then when we made it, stop us from releasing it. And then when we release it, stop it from getting uploaded. And then, it was like every step of the way was a fight, was a battle beyond just logistics and money or anything like that is typical with filmmaking. So, I mean, that's really how we knew something was special, because, if you're making the devil angry, you're doing something right. And so we just kept leaning into that and kept going, and that's all we could do. And at the end of the day, sometimes we're like, I can't believe this happened. And I was trying to think of one example to give you. But there was a couple situations where, the people on the left were just like, they wrote hit pieces about us. They said things that were not true. They tried to set up a situation where we would show up and get ambushed and at this bar. I mean, it was just, there was so much crazy stuff. I can't even think of all of the things at one time, but yeah, it was a crazy experience for sure.
So I have a question. You guys had this really beautiful mind map, that was a big part of the film. It was often the backdrop, even when it wasn't being referenced directly. What was the process of mapping the war on children? So, when did that really become crystallized? Was that something you guys developed and then it helped put together the film? And, What was it like to really visualize the war in that way?
Well, doing the work I do, I always think, my lens through everything is seeing it from a children's perspective and how it affects them. And for me, to understand and combat child exploitation or child trafficking, this big mountain, I have to understand, what the trails of leading up to that mountain are. Like why is this mountain so big? Or for a better analogy, a fire. Why is the fire so big? And we keep throwing buckets of water and nothing happens. And so I really studied the trails of gasoline. I started looking at sexual behaviors in our society and how they've changed, and so dramatically and so rapidly. Like 10 years ago, if some of these pornographic books had been in school, I mean, people would be arrested. There'd be fistfights outside of schools. No parent would have allowed any of this to happen. So how did parents become groomed to just sit back, let our kids have social media, go to school, and be indoctrinated and not realize what was happening to them? So I think that examining all those cultural elements and how these institutions and people even in the medical industry with these God complexes have been afforded more power and control, and us as parents have just kind of shrunk back and licensed our children out. This is what has to change. And I wrote a document called The Parenting Revolution, to further, expand on what concrete actions have to be taken after you see this film. I don't want people to see this film and just be like, oh my gosh, that is the biggest bummer ever. What can I do? There's real things that the parents need to do, especially to reclaim our power and fight back to protect our kids.
One thing I didn't know was about this entire underworld that's happening. And I grew up in Hollywood, so I've seen a lot of things, and I'm sure your husband has as well. But I didn't know this stuff. And speaking to Steve Smith, who's the founder of the Mom Army, we had a several discussion interview about this, and I was honestly blown away. After I spoke to her, I'm like, I can't believe this is happening all around us. Like, and with the secret codes they use and all these different stuff they use to get around what they're really doing, it's sadistic. I think it's the worst thing that anyone as a human can do. And the fact that they're doing it as now it's part of their ideology to go after these children just kind of shows how degraded they've become as human beings, that they're trying to do this to people. It's sad.
Right. And why is the demand so big now? Like what changed? And Hollywood, I really believe, was the marketing arm for the sexual exploitation industry, and they still are. And so they simply started injecting more children into that sexual space and making that more acceptable for people, to watch and think is normal.
So when do you think the government or Hollywood figured out how to trick parents into giving their kids to the government or the Department of Education or over to this ideology? Because it seems so strange. Like I was homeschooled back in the day, and my parents didn't want me to go to school because they didn't want me to learn about evolution, right? But now it seems like parents are just willingly giving their kids over. So like, when did that switch flip? Because I mean, even 10 years ago, it didn't seem like it was this bad, right?
Right. I think it actually did start. I mean, if we're being like technical, decades ago, with the more power government has had, the more power they've accumulated, the less power we've had as citizens and as parents with the medical, with the way we educate our kids and homeschooling rights in states, losing those. So I think you can, if you looked at a chart of us losing our, individual rights as parents, you will see the increase in these problems in schools and the other institutions. And I think that we're at a boiling point now because nothing has been done to stop it. And that's kind of the thing with grooming or, desensitization, is it happens like a frog boiling in a pot of water. It happens fast and then slow, and then you don't even know how you got there.
Mm-hmm. So you, had to find a lot of different stories, sift through a lot of different stories, because of course there's like an endless list of people coming forward trying to explain what's happening to them or to their children. And you ended up connecting with Harrison. So I'm curious, how did Harrison end up fitting in what you were creating? And Harrison, for you, what was it like, the collaboration and getting to meet up in person? And what was the result for you guys in collaborating?
Well, I would say I think I saw Harrison's story online or through Mom Army, and I was just really excited. Number one, that a father was fighting for his child. And then the fact that Harrison's so young and doing that when so many fathers are just taking a back seat as this happens. I was really interested in his story. So I was really excited to get connected with him. And I think his story is a very important piece of the puzzle happening that people are able to identify with when they actually hear him share that. So yeah, I was really happy he could be in it.
Yeah, for me, it was just a surreal experience. I had just kind of started to come out and tell my story publicly, and I got this huge opportunity. And I went out to Nashville, and honestly, Landon and her family were just so kind and respectful to me. And it was such an amazing conversation. And to be part of such an awesome movie like about protecting children, if you asked me 5 years ago, I'd never thought I'd be in a situation like this. But I know that this is exactly where I'm supposed to be, and that protecting children is the most important thing there is. And it was just absolutely spectacular to be part of it. And I'm always going to fight for not only Sawyer, but for all kids at this point. It's way beyond just me. I have the courage to absolutely stand up for what I believe. I don't care what they do to me, say about me, anything like that. Like, it's totally on. Gloves are off.
That's awesome.
I was Michael, who is a member of the Breakaway USA team. He just interviewed Bill Federer, who's an incredible gentleman, and he said something very, very eye-opening at the end. He says every generation has has their thing. Every generation has their thing that they fight. He goes, and I have hope. And I was thinking, because he's older and he's probably like, oh my gosh, the world is crumbling, but he was actually hopeful. He goes, in this generation, now we have this, and there are young men and women who are fighting the battle, who are going to be the leaders and the heroes of this generation. And I was like, that's so true. And Harrison, when you were saying that, it really struck me. I was like, you're one of those people. And Landon, and I mean, to a certain extent, I mean, we all are. We're all fighting this stuff. So I think it's pretty incredible that we all have these different walks of life, but destiny has brought us all here for one singular reason, is that's to beat back the devil in this generation and make him go back underground, to where he came from. They have a little bit of an edge, or they've had, because they've had decades of trying this out, and now we've figured it out. We're like, nope, not going to happen. And Landon, you were saying something earlier, and I was reminded of George Lukács, who was this Hungarian Marxist, who was really the proponent of bringing sex into school and just making children try to be deviant. And it's so sad. What did you find in this movie, like as you were interviewing people, that you didn't? So obviously you know a lot, but what did you find that you were like, I can't believe this is going on? Because I feel like I've had those moments many times myself as well.
I knew most of the underbelly of what's happening in institutions and who's behind it. I think I had a little bit of naivete about people. I love people, and I don't approach them in a combative way, even if somebody vehemently disagrees with me. I will show respect and kindness. And so I think I was a little taken aback at being respectful and outreaching to people that claim to be love and light and all of these things, and how like the vitriol that we were met with, like just disgusting behavior, and just like hurling insults, and then going and spreading gossip and horrible things, and you're just asking questions. Like it was pretty shocking to me, because I thought that we would find a lot more people that just wanted to hear their perspective, so we could have some meaningful dialogue. And I think that the doc took the shape it did to serve the purpose it has now. But I think that it was really interesting, like meeting with the drag queen. I thought for sure this drag queen would be like, hey, I do drag, but I'm not with that. That's not cool. I'm not about that. I thought we would have like this, like maybe understanding that, hey, nobody had a problem with you doing drag. 5 years ago, it was when you guys started involving children in that element. It's always been a sexual adult thing. I thought for sure this is somebody in my hometown in Nashville. And when he, behaved that way, I was just like, man, if we can't find common ground with people just on not sexualizing kids, where are we going to go from here? And I think that was a little bit shocking to me, because I'm more guarded coming from this experience, that just people don't want to have a conversation, and they don't actually want to have their views challenged or have questions asked. That's a scary thing. That's not a good place to be in.
So as I was watching the film, there's one question that I just haven't been able to get answered with all this stuff. Where does the burden of responsibility lie? Is it with the parents for abdicating their kids? Is it with the schools? Is it with therapists or the doctors who are transing these kids? Like, where do you guys think the burden of responsibility lies?
I would say it's a loaded question because, I mean, I believe everything comes down to individual responsibility. But when you have a minor, a child, it's the parent's responsibility. But
Mhm.
when parents fail to do their role, right, with so many children in foster care and, children who are just neglected or their parents aren't doing their job, we have some social responsibility that when we walk down a street and we see a child by themselves, we have a duty, whether that's our child or not, screaming for their mom to intervene, our humanity to intervene there. If we see a crime being committed, we have a duty as a citizen to report it or to intervene and stop it, something bad from happening. And to some extent, we at one point agreed on family shared spaces, right? That like crazy sexuality, like you can't go walking down the street and people having sex on the street or advertising themselves prostitutes in the window. This isn't a red light district. I mean, these things were never normal or accepted. And now all of these things are being normalized and accepted. So I think that if we're talking about individual responsibilities, every doctor performing these surgeries, absolutely, they're responsible. Every parent who's neglected their child is responsible. But there's also, these institutions, including social media. It's not their job to make sure a child is safe online, but it is their job not to invite children into a place where they know that there's porn and predators and they won't be safe online. And I think that we've just lost those moral lines of what people's responsibilities and roles are. If a child goes to a doctor, and they are willing to perform a surgery without consent of the minor or the parent, or they both, in that situation, both the parent and the doctor have failed that child. I think you have to take it by situation to really see that. But, that's the problem is that you have these people in control of these institutions and endorsing these crimes essentially against humanity and against children. So that it's really complicated, but I think ultimately that individual responsibility is really important to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this often, and I think about the collective responsibility because some of that is it's broad, but it reaches quite far back through history. In terms of not really defending the institution of the family, not defending the actual concept of childhood innocence. That's something that we've really let slide culturally, I think, for a long time. And I'd say that just from, my experiences growing up, the things that I was allowed to see and experience that were harmful for me as a child. And I noticed that living here in Toronto, that there is a big problem with just even like local art shows and bars putting up ads that are just straight pornographic because there's this complete lack of awareness of childhood innocence being something that is present, ever present in our communities. And so building our communities around the presence of childhood innocence, to me, that's something that we let slip away. And so there is kind of a collective responsibility there for that which we did not guard. And I think that's a big part of our responsibility now as we're seeking to build a parallel society, parallel economy, which means parallel forms of cultural production. We need to really make sure that which we failed to protect up until now is really guarded in the new forms of culture and the new institutions that we're building.
I see a lot of, there's plenty of blame to go around. Definitely parents and doctors, I think, really need to be held accountable for some of this gender ideology and gender mutilation, et cetera, that's happening to kids, which is absolutely horrific. One of the greatest evils of our time. But there's also parents that stand up to it and actually get punished for doing so, whether that's custody taken from them, CPS involved with them, et cetera. But I'm going to give a different answer, actually, than all of those. At this point, I think it's becoming clear. And when you look through history at all the great atrocities that have happened, doesn't matter which one, you could pick any of them. It's the vast majority of people that committed them or did nothing about it. So at this point, it's everybody sitting at home right now that knows what we're saying is common sense and totally agrees with us. Doesn't even matter who you vote for. Doesn't matter where you live. But you do not have the courage to say what you believe. At this point, that is who is responsible. If everybody just said what they believe, it would end tomorrow. We need to have courage. Everybody just needs to stand up for what they believe. Kids do not deserve to be mutilated. They deserve to be protected from all of these things. It's common sense. Everybody agrees. That's who's to blame, in my opinion. And it's time to speak up. This is our fight. Like I heard earlier, this is our, our great moment, our World War II moment. This is it. This is the fight of our lives. You watch Lord of the Rings, you watch Star Wars, you pretend you'd be on the side of the good guys. Here's your chance. The time is right now to do something that matters and to have courage And I just really hope more people will wake up and start to be brave.
Yeah, and I think people need to be okay with being uncomfortable, especially parents, because it's going to be really uncomfortable, especially in the beginning, because these other people, they know what they're doing. This is all they do. They obsess about corrupting your children. So as a parent, you're not obsessed with that stuff. You're focused on raising a kid. So you have to, I call it the ramp up period, where they have to understand what's happening and the vileness of it, because people hear stuff, oh, that's not really happening. It's like, yes, it is. And I think this documentary is going to wake up a lot of people who are keep pushing, kicking the can down the road and say, well, someone will do something about it. It's like, no, there's no, look to your left and your right. You're the only mother in your area that thinks this way, or maybe there's more, but talk about it. So I think we have to get comfortable with being offended and with being uncomfortable, because I think that's one of the most important things in life. Otherwise, how do you know you're wrong if you never challenge?
So, Landon, what has been some of the response, now that it's, the film has really reached quite a lot of people, as Fabian's saying, and you got the endorsement of like Elon Musk. And so all these eyes were on it. Have you been getting any kind of feedback from people that's been especially powerful or something that really struck you? What's been the word from the people?
Yeah, I mean, those are the messages I get most excited about, is just a random message from a dad or mom that says, shame on me. I had no idea this was going on and I should have been paying attention. And, just knowing that people are having realizations, and that because of that realization, their child is better protected, makes every grueling moment of this, making this film, and, it makes it all worth it. Makes everything we do worth it. Speaking up, taking the risks, the sacrifices that we all have made in our personal lives, to stand for truth and for what's right, makes it all worth it when you are seeing that there is an impact from doing that, and so that's really cool to see.
So, when I was editing the little interview in the film that I was working on, I could see that there was so much there to use. So of course, there's stuff you guys had to leave on the cutting room floor. Is there anything being done with portions of this that weren't used, or how do you guys feel about that, which really couldn't make it into the film because it was really full and complete? But how do you feel about some of those things that just didn't make the cut?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about, we're gonna eventually trickle some of this out and release some of the full length interviews. It's just, we're a small team. It's just wild because it's it's just like 5 of us, and we're working on this every day, and all the correspondences and media stuff coming in, and I mean it's been a wild ride, and to see the success of it. But we definitely want to get back to what we do best, and filmmaking, working on the next project, getting the rest of the uncut clips out to people, continuing to create value and educational information, awareness information for them. So I'm excited to get back to work.
Awesome. So I know we only have you for a few more minutes, so I did want to ask, after a mother or a father or anyone has seen this film, they've listened to this interview, and they're like, and they feel invigorated, they want to do something. What would be some first logical steps for them to go to, maybe resources or things to watch, or what should they do?
Thank you for asking that. That's one of the reasons I created the Parenting Revolution doc, and it's free. It's a downloadable PDF. When you subscribe to my nonprofit's website, freedomforever.us, we are a volunteer-run site. I don't and nonprofit. I don't get a salary. Nobody takes a salary. It's just people that care about protecting children from child exploitation and trafficking. And so I felt like this document was really important to give parents tools, actions to take, non-negotiables. And I think it's the feedback from that has been really great too, for people who are ready to make those changes. So I've been really excited that we have those resources as well, like on our site, for parents who are like, oh my gosh, I didn't know social media was this dangerous, but they need a phone. What do I do? We're like, oh, well, we have TrueMe. We have all of these resources for parents, and also resources for people who are saying, oh, this stuff isn't happening, or where can I find facts on this? We have all of these resources available for people. So I hopefully they find it's a great resource.
And what was the website one more time?
freedomforever.us.
freedomforever.us. And also, can you tell people how to get a hold of you and everything that you guys are doing?
Yeah, so you would just follow me on IG, Landon Starbuck, on X, Landon Starbuck. That's, I think, yeah, I'm not really on Facebook very much, but I should be.
Anymore.
Yeah, I know. I'm like,
Yeah.
who's on Facebook anymore? I don't know. Maybe our parents are. I don't know.
Well, listen, I had a great time talking to you. I think we all learned a lot. And anyone who's listening to this interview, go to the website, do something, because if you don't do something, things aren't going to get better. They're only going to get worse. You've done nothing until now, and look at what things are. So maybe you try something else and fight for your kids' future and for your children's future. So Landon, I want to thank you for your time. We've had a great interview, and we'll hopefully talk again soon.
Thank you so much. I wish I could stay on longer, but I have 3 kids too, so I got to get back to them. But thank you all so much, and I loved all of your commentary, and it's so inspiring to see strong men fighting for children, fighting for what's right. So y'all keep up the great work.
Thanks, Landon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Landon.
All right. Bye.
Appreciate you.